Hello everyone, this is Eugene Dilan speaking to you from Dilan headquarters, which is now located in my home in Sonoma. I wanted to speak with you a little bit today because a couple of days ago we celebrated 13 years of being in business, and there is a question that I am often asked, and that is, how did you start Dilan Consulting, and why did you start Dilan Consulting, and how did you get the tagline, business is human, all of that good stuff. And so I thought that, given that it's our anniversary, it would be appropriate to share a little bit of our story. For starters, I want to say that probably about a good 25 to 30 years ago, I realized that while I loved being a clinical psychologist and I loved working with patients, I really struggled with being in the same office day in, day out. And while again, it was very gratifying to work with people and support them as they explored their path, I think to feeling better about themselves and their lives, I felt like I was limited. And so that got me to thinking about how can I kind of still use my skills, but find a different way of applying them. At the same time, kind of coincidentally, I started to get invitations to speak, and I started to get some invitations to do little workshops on how to work with particular populations. At the time, I did a lot of work in harm reduction. I also did a lot of work in the Latino community and the gay and lesbian community. And so some of these other nonprofits started to ask me to come in and do kind of little trainings for people. And so I started to dabble, and literally I had an aha moment. Oh my God, this is what I want to do. And so needless to say, I quickly tried to figure out, how do I pivot? How do I, again, take my education, my training, my background, and how do I kind of segue into the consulting industry? And I have to say that I was really puzzled. It was not easy. I think part of the problem with it not being easy is that I was no longer in my 20s. I was probably in my 30s. And a lot of the large consulting firms do hire psychologists, but more often than not, they're looking for people who are a little bit greener. And there was also an economic downturn going on. And so people weren't really hiring at the same rate that they had been hiring before. And yet in my mind, I was like, this is where I'm going, and I just have to figure out the how. So I kind of had applied to many things and literally was kind of on the verge of saying, oh, this is never gonna happen. And I saw a newspaper advertisement in a newspaper called the APA Monitor. It's a newspaper for clinical psychologists. And on the back page of this, I saw a little ad that said, looking for clinical psychologists who have managed businesses, teams, budgets. Please apply by December 23rd, 24th, something of that sort. And I read that and I said, oh my God, this is me, except that the deadline was December and I was only seeing this little ad in January. And something inside me said, go ahead and send your resume anyway. And I did, and literally within a week, I had like a 2 or 3 hour phone call with the woman who later became my boss. I spent 10 years working with this company. I learned a lot, and for that, I'm very, very, very grateful. And around the 8th or 9th year, I started to get that itch again of, I'm not really growing. I'm not really learning. I'm not feeling particularly challenged. And I'll also have to admit that there was something about the culture of the organization did not feel good for me. I felt that there was a stated value and then there was a behavior that didn't always mix. And so again, I knew that my time there was going to be limited, that soon I needed to do something. And all kinds of things transpired with other people in the business, not myself. But as I sat and reflected one holiday over the Christmas holidays, I said to my spouse, I said, you know what? It's time. I said, if this is how the company treats other people, It's only a matter of time before that's how I get treated. And so I went into our January meeting and pretty quickly announced that I was going to give notice. And so that literally is the path that led me to this work, that led me to starting the company. And so that was an interesting process because I worked for a British company, and lucky for me it worked out because I had a 3-month garden duty, which means that when you give notice, they kind of keep you on board. But I was sent home. I was sent home and said, you don't need to do anything, just go home. And so long story short, those 3 months and that salary really helped me to spend some time uninterrupted, ideating, talking to friends and talking to family and anyone that I knew, my old mentors. I called them all up and they connected me with people who were already starting companies, and this leads me to the story of business is human. Because one day, like today, I was sitting with a very dear friend, Robin Beers, who's also an organizational consultant. At the time, she was working for Wells Fargo, and we were talking about, okay, so what makes me different? And she was like, well, you're a truth teller. And I'm like, well, good, I'm a truth teller, I like that. And then she said, Eugene, I had done some work earlier and kind of launched something but didn't go anywhere with it. And I had crafted a tagline called Business is Human. And she said, I think that tagline really speaks to who you are and the work that you do. And she said, use it, run with it, and so that truly was a gift that I still am so grateful for, and a gift that I think has so many layers to it, because you can think of business being human in the context of humanity, that we're all humans and somehow bringing compassion and empathy and things of that sort. You can think of business being human in terms of that's how business started. People helping people is literally how business started. And people would barter because you had something I didn't have, and everybody's quality of life was elevated because we were sharing resources that other people didn't have. But business is human also for me means that you're taking care of all the stakeholders. It's not just the owner of the company. It's certainly not just the stockholder. It's the employees, it's the vendors. And so that tagline, I think really speaks to what the company has become. And I think what we stand for as clinical psychologists, most of us are doing this work, that we really believe that business thrives when we take care of all the stakeholders. Of course, business is there, at least I think at the moment, with the primary goal of somehow making a profit. But I think that when you make that center of the business that's only about making profit, I think what happens is that ethical breaches happen. Water gets polluted and people decide to take things that aren't theirs. And again, I don't want to go down that path and spend too much time on that, because this is a good story, 13 years in business, and I'm very excited about it. But I do think it's worth noting that there have been times over the years when I thought, am I going to make it? And there have been times like during COVID, when things got really tough, business was coming through and all of a sudden everything came to a standstill. And I had people with families and homes, and they were depending on us to make sure, and so some tough decisions made, like borrowing money in order to keep people employed, because business is human, and I felt like I have to have integrity around this. So long story short, it is 13 years now. We love the work that we do. We have worked in almost every sector from defense. We have worked with companies like Genentech. We have worked with analytics companies, social networks, a lot of nonprofits along the way, because fundamentally what we do, the skills that we work, the services that we offer fundamentally are about people. It's about how do you manage change? How do you help people who are diverse to have a conversation where they respect each other, where people can feel included? It's about how do you manage a conflict? It's literally around how do you give your leaders the skills that will help them to show up in a way that brings out the best in their people. How do you shape organizational culture? You develop your leaders. You choose really good values. You embed those values in everything that you do, especially your decision making. I cannot say enough that I have been challenged in almost every single way that you can think of. From people joining the company who really weren't committed to, really wanting to, I think, grow, but being mindful that growth doesn't always, support the kinds of relationships that we want to have. Several offices, different moves, expanding and getting smaller again, and now my move to the country and learning how to run a business mostly remotely, and living in a rural area, which is the first time I've ever done that. Anyway, here's what I want to kind of end with. That I believe that entrepreneurship is really the way of the future. I think that more and more people are going to find that it's incredibly gratifying that whatever work you do, at the end of the day, you see the benefits of it. I think also with this, local mindset that's permeating a lot of industries and people wanting to be mindful of the environment, supporting entrepreneurship is a good thing. So again, what I would say is I'm happy I made this decision. It's been a ride and a half. I have had a lot of fun. Sometimes I'm holding on to my seat with a little bit of fear, but I always say if you're not a little afraid, then you're not pushing yourself hard enough. And anyway, I'm also incredibly grateful. I have met some lovely, lovely people. I have done some great work that I'm very proud of. And I have made some incredible friends, both the team, some of which have been with DILAN since the beginning, really, and some clients that I now count as friends that I can call on, that I visit with, who visit with me. So anyway, thank you so much for all of your support for all of these years. And please do keep thinking of us, because that is why we're still here. We barely advertise. It's all been word of mouth. So thank you. And don't forget, business is human, and I'll talk to you soon. Bye.